Alright, whole building design guide, continuing education operation, optimizing operation maintenance, reliability center maintenance. Introduction. For the exempt for the preventive maintenance that has been exhibited the most advanced for the effective for the maintenance for the technique available to be used for the industrial facility maintenance organization. Preventive maintenance program is based on the assumptions of the fundamental cause of the effect of the relation between the scale of the maintenance for the operation reliability assumption of the web based on initiative Benelli for the because of the mechanical the parts of the wear out of the reliability of the equipment directly relieve the operating aids, therefore involved with the more frequent equipment with the overhaul with the better with the protected was again with the likelihood of the failure. Only problem was determining what the aids life and necessary to the reliable operation. Only help will reach of the consolidation whose maintenance policy of the base exclusive within some of the maximum operating age would no matter what age limit it have little no effect with the failure rate and separate independent study with the note of that a difference exists for the perceived and interesting design life of the majority equivalent component with in fact with the discovered in many cases the equivalent greatly exceed with the perceived state of the design life reliability center maintenance optimum mix of the reactive of the time based the interval based control based and proactive maintenance practice of the basic application like easy strategy shown figure 1 maintenance strategy rather than being applied with the end or integrated with the taking advantage of the respective strengths in order to maximize facility equipment reliability, minimizing life cycle costs. So you have reliable centered maintenance, reactive with the interval, and CBM and proactive. RCM reliable centered maintenance includes reactive with the time-based, condition-based, proactive with the task condition. The user should understand some of the boundaries of facilities and envelopes, system and equipment and function failure for the failure modes. Also with the critical component of the reliable centered maintenance description. Friend of maintenance assumed that the failure probates for the determine the statistical individual machine with the component of the parts of the can be replaced with adjustment can be performed with the time of the preclude with the failure with the for example the common practice has been taken to replace with the new renew with the bearings after the sum of the many operating hours, assuming the bearing failure with a rate of an increase over the time service. Figure 2 with the bearing life scatter with the show failure with the distribution group with the 30 identical with the 6309 deep group ball bearings and so with the bearing life test machine with the running failure with the wide variation bearing life. Observious precludes the effective of the time-based maintenance strategy. Frequently, the computer advance of the 1990 with it has been made with the possible cause of the identified with the precursor of the failure with the quantified with the equipment condition with the schedule with the appropriate repair with a higher degree with the confidence of the when was possible the performance strictly interval-based maintenance with the reliable home with the usually error and estimate with the component with the might fail with the also with the discover the resolution with the more different equipment of the failure with the other characteristics. Only a small number with the aid with the user relay with the new knowledge increase with the emphasis with the conditioning mind with the often review the condition-based maintenance which call for the reduction of the reliance of the time-based program preventive maintenance. It should not be intended above with all the internal interval-based maintenance, but it should be replaced with the condition-based maintenance. In fact, with the interval-based maintenance is appropriate with the issue with the brace, with the corrosive, with the corrosive wear, with the takes place, with the material properties change due with the fatigue of embrittlement, etc., with a clear correlation between age and functional reliable to exist. In addition to those system components with no failure with the consequence of the term of the mission, environmental safety, security with the life cycle costs exist. Maintenance should not be performed if, i.e., the equipment should not run with the failure to replace the concept of the reliable center maintenance have the adopted across the several government with the industry operations strategy with the performance maintenance with the reliable center maintenance apply with the maintenance strategy based on all the consequences of the cost failure. Addition the reliable center maintenance cost with the chief with the minimize maintenance to improve the reliability throughout the life cycle with the proactive the technique with improve the design specification integration the coordination mode monitoring commission profit the age exploration process. Reliable center maintenance principle with these are the primary reliable center maintenance principles. Reliable center maintenance functional orientated. Reliable center maintenance seeks to preserve the system and equipment system function with not adjustable operation site redundancy function on multiple pieces of the equipment and practice to improve the functional reliability, increase the life cycle in terms of the procurement of the operation and the cost. The system is focused reliable center media system is focused is more concerned with the maintained system function and the individual component function. The reliable center maintenance reliability centered treats failure with the statistic with the actual man with the relation between the operating age and the failure with the experience with the important reliable center maintenance not overly concerned with a simple failure rate. It seeks to know if the conditional problem of failure to specific ages, reliable centered acknowledgement of design limitation, reliable centered maintenance object is maintained with an inherently reliable equipment design recognized with the change with the inherent with the reliability providence of the design rather than the maintenance can be at best only achieve maintain level reliability for the equipment provided with the design. However, the reliability centered maintenance recognized with the maintenance for the feedback with it can improve on the original design. In addition, reliable centered maintenance recognize that the difference often exists between the perceived design life and the intrinsic actual design life with address the age exploration process. Reliability centered maintenance driven safety and security economics. Safety and security must be ensured with the cost for the and therefore cost effective becomes criteria. Reliable centered maintenance defines failure unsatisfactory condition, therefore failure must be either loss of a function or loss of the acceptable quality. Reliability RCM uses logic tree with a screen with a maintenance task that provides consistent approach to the maintenance of all kinds of equipment. RCM takes tasks must be applicable. Tasks must address failure mode with consider the failure more characteristics. RCM must be effective with the task must reduce the probability of failure and be cost effective. RCM acknowledges the three types of maintenance tasks. These tasks are time-related, time-directed, PM, condition-directed, and failure to find one of the several aspects of the proactive maintenance. The time-directed task schedule with the appropriate with the condition, with the directed task for the perform with the condition indicate with the needed failure finding task detect hidden function with the fail with the given evidence pending failure, additional performing no maintenance for until due failure with the conscious decision acceptable for some of the equipment. RCM living system RCM gather the data for the result of the achieve of the feed data back to improve the design feature maintenance. For this feedback is important for the proactive maintenance element of the RCM program. Types of RCM. The shuffle the wave of the deck with the RCM program. The program can be rigorous with the failure modes, effective for the analyst, if they complete with the mathematically complicated problems for the failure design, based on the design historical data of the intuition with the commentary with the and over the experimental data with the modeling. These approaches for the called classical rigorous Inuit initiative streamlined and abbreviated other terms in with the items of the same approach for the concise with the preventive maintenance, optimization, reliability based and reliability enhanced are all applicable. The design techniques should be left on the end of the user based on consequent failure, probability failure, historical data available, risk tolerance, resource availability. Classic rigorous RCM. Classic regular RCM provided with the knowledge of the data concerned with the system functions of the failure mode of the maintenance action for addressing the functional failure of the RCM approaches. Rigorous RCM analysis of the method, the first proposed with the documentation all in a heap, later modified with the John Mowbray, Anthony Smith, and others. In addition, the method should be produced the most complete with the documentation of all methods addressed concerned. Classical rigorous RCM historical has been primary with the FMEA with little with the anything analyzing historical performance data with addition with the rigorous RCM analysis, extremely labored and intensive for the outpost for the implementation of obvious condition monitoring task application. This approach should be limited to three situations: consequent failures, resolve of the catastrophic risk of the terms of the environmental health and safety of the complete economic failure of the business unit, result in reliability, associated maintenance cost of the unacceptable after performing and implementing streamlined type of FMEA. System is equivalent with a new organizational with insufficient corporate maintenance for the operational knowledge exists of the function of the functional failures. Abbreviated initiative and streamlined RCM. The benefits of the initiative, the approach of the intended, if the implements the obvious for the usual condition, maybe the task for the minimum analysis of the condition with the code, but the eliminated low value maintenance task based on the historical data of the maintenance operation and the personal input with the intent, and so for the minimize the intentional analysis time and in order to realize the early wins for the help, the offset of the odds for the FMEA condition monitoring capability development concerns reliability, historical record of the personal knowledge of the country with the errors of the process that may lead to missing hidden failure with which the low probability occurrence exists. Additional initiative or process that require with at least one individual throughout the understanding of the various condition and monitoring techniques. Application approach should be utilized with the function of the system and equipment, but the understanding of the functional failure of the system and equipment will not result in loss of life, catastrophic impact of environmental business or unit for the reason of the streamlined initiative approach for the best recommended for the JOS, NASA, Navy fact facilities in addition for the streamlined with initiative approach for the successfully useful both discrete and continuous manufacturing facilities. RCM and analysis. RCM and analysis should be carefully considered when they answer the following question. What does the system or equipment do? What are the function failures that are likely to occur? What are the likely consequence of the function failures? What can be to do for the practice? Probability of failure if identified with one over the onset with a failure, whose consequent failure for the answer to these questions that can be approved with the decision logic tree. Depicted in Figure 3 with a reliable center mate with a decision logical tree will determine the main approach of the equipment and items same. Note the analyzing process depicted with the Figure 3 with the only four possible outcome of the performed condition-based action, the interval with the base action, and determine the redesign problem and acceptable failure, determine the main for the action, and the reduce the probability of failure, and solve the redundancy, perform no action chug, achieve the reviews, achieve the repair following failure, render failure. Or failure is a sustentation proper function of the performance of the RCM with examine the failure with the level, the system level, the subsystem level, the component level, and sometimes even the part level. The goal is effective of the maintenance organization provided the required system performance at a low cost. It means maintenance approach must be based on the clear understanding of the failure with each of the system level. The system components can be degraded with the even failed, still not cause the system failure. A single example of the failed with a headlamp with an automobile. File component effectively overall system performance. Conversely, system degraded components may combine with the cause of the system and fail with it, even though no individual component has itself failed. System and the system boundary. A system in the user-defined group component with equipment and facility with the support of the operational equipment. The operation requirement is defined with the mission critical by environmental health, safety, regulatory, quality, other agency business defined requirement that most systems can divide the unique subsystems along with the user-defined boundary. The boundaries are selected with the method of dividing system into subsystems with the complexity of the ranks for the analysis for the means of the difficulty. A system boundary with the interface with the definition, condition for the description, with the input and the outputs for the cross each boundary, fidelity engine envelope with the physical barrier with the grade with the building enclosure and the other structure, the cooling standard for the selecting building boundaries. For example, the pump could include first upstream, downstream installation valve with coupling associated gauge. Motor would include the electrical circuit with the load type of the motor controlled center but not coupling. The intent of developing circuit with the models of the FMEAS for the symbol of these with the Lego block with the select with the maintenance selection with the baseline with the going to determine the critical probability factor for the defined with the table of 1 and 2 respectively. Function and functional failure of the function of the defined with the performance expectation can be have many elements include with the physical property operation performance include with the output tolerance of the time requirements of the continuous operation limited reliability equipment. Functional failure of the description of various equipment and ways in which the system subsystem can fail to meet the functional requirement designed to meet in the equipment. System and subsystem operating degraded with the shape of the most does not impact with the requirement addressed in subsystem and system boundary has not experienced and the function failure. It's important to determine all the functions of the significant given the operational context for the clearly defined with the function non-performance. Functional failure will become clearly defined. For example, it is not enough for the function of the pump to remove the water, but the function of the pump must be specifically determined and defined such as the flow rate, the discharge valve, pressure, vibration levels, etc. Life failure modes. There are equipment and components specifically failure for the result of the functional failure for the subsystem and then a system. For example, the machine with the train with the component with the motor with the pump with the foil cast fractally due with the complete with the windings of the bearing and then shaft and power with the control with the seal with the system with the facility failure. Also occur with the pump with the performance that degrade with the shaft that added the insufficient with the discharge pressure for the flow of the motor and meeting operating requirement. These operating requirements should be considered with the developing maintenance task for dominant failure modes. Responsible for significant proper proportion over their failure items. The most common modes of failure. Not all failure modes of the cause of the warranty of the condition and the base of the maintenance of the cover the likelihood of occurring with the remove of their effect of their inconsistencies. Inconsequentially, reliability, probability, actually for the survival of the given operations under specific operation conditions, failure of the U expressed. Life and mean time to failure with the mean time between failure with the condition probability failure measure the probability of the item entering given age interval dissolved during with that interval with the conditional probability of the failure increases within the age item shares wear out characteristics. Conditional probability of failure effect for the overall advantage effect for the age for the reliability but not measured for the change of the individual equivalent item. Failure rate of the frequency plans of the relatively minor role with the maintenance program to be coupled with too simple to measure for the frequency, but they are useful for the making of the cost decision, determination, maintenance interval, but tells nothing with which the maintenance has to appropriately consequence of this failure. Aid maintenance solutions should be evaluated in terms of safety, security, economic consequence with the intent whether a maintenance of the task must be applicable in order to be effective. Failure characteristic. Conditional problem with the failure of the curves then fell into 6 basic types of the graph, and then figures 2, 3, and 2, 2, and 2, 3 random conditional probability failure with the gauge related to the conditional probability failure curve of the person is equivalent with the conformity of each one of the 6 squares. Partners determined 3 separate studies and shown in the bill figures. Failure characteristic figure 4, 5 random capability conditional probability failure curve. First known in previously cited book, Reliable Center Maintenance File on the studies of Sweden 1973, U.S. Navy 1983, produced similar result with the 3 study of the random failure of the account 77 to 92%. All failures related are in age-related characteristics, the remaining 8 and 23%. Alright, the basic difference between the failure patterns and complex symbol ideas, important implication made the sum of the pieces of the simple of the items frequently demonstrate the direct relation between the reliability age, particularly true with the factor of the metal fatigue with the mechanical wear with the present with the wear item the design with the consumable short with a predictable lifespan. In these cases, the age limit it must be operating time with the stress cycle with the effect of improving the overall reliability complex item, which they are part of. The complex item frequency the demonstrates with an infinite mortality extra failure probability increases gradually, but this remains constant, making marked wear outage is not common in most cases. Scheduled with the overall increase with the overall rate with the increase. Introduction of high infinite mortality rate with the otherwise stable system. Preventing failure. Every equipment of this characteristic has been called resistance to margin failure. The equipment is subject to the stress can resolve the failure with the stress exceeds the resistance to failure. It depicts the concept gradually. Figure 6. Figure show the failure with the maybe predicting the item life extended, decreasing amount with the stress applied with the term of the life of the term exceed with the period. Stress reduction shown increase with the restoring of the item resistant failure. Life of the item exceed the period by resistant increase shown. Increase rate and degradation item resistance for marginal failure of the item exceed with the period F2 to F3 by the decreased rate resistance degradation shown. Stress is dependently either the high variable with the many of the case increase with the degree of the remain constant with the even at the time of the review of the failures large nominal normal incidence some impulse items that was so with the majority they had the same age failure with the subject statistical variation of the failure of the curve of the same region with the considerable to prevent the mean with the sum of the sample item confined with the measure of the resistant failure with the can use of the information helps select the preventive task. As avoid adding excess of the material of the chain with the type of the material of the wear out with the consumer the increase of the resistance of the failure of the rate with the degradation, excess of the strength with the vibe with the compensate with the loss with the corrosion, fatigue. Most common method of restoring resistance to replace the item with the resistant failure with the simply item, decrease of the time and the age of the complexity units of the hundreds of the interacting simple items of the part of the head, considerable numbers of the failure modes, and complex cave of the mechanism of failure and the shape of the bar, the operating on the many of the simpler component parts, simultaneously ineffectively interactive with the show of the failure no longer occur within some of the same reason for the same age. For the complex units, usually unlikely for the one can design the maintenance task, usually with a few dominant critical failure modes. Failure modes effective analysis, or FMEA. Failure modes effective analysis is applied with each subsystem components identified as the boundary definition. For every function identified, there can be multiple failure modes. The failure modes and effective analysis addresses each system function as each of such instance of failure with the loss function possible failures. The dominant failure modes associated with each of the failure, but they examine the consequence of the failure, while the effect of the failure over the mission and operation of the system on the machine. Even though the multiple failure modes often affect the failure of the same failure, similar in nature of the stresses from the system function perspective outcome and the component of the failure may result with the system function being degraded. Likewise, similar system machines will often have the same failure modes. However, the system will determine the failure consequences. For the example, the failure mode of the ball bearing will be same regardless of the machine. However, the dominate with the failure mode will have the change from the machine to machine. So the failure may change, the effect of the failure will differ. Alright, critical probability occurrence of the critical assessment provided by the means of the quantify the importance of the system and relatively identify the mission table of 1 and categories provided with the ranking of the system. Critical system in the adaptive automotive industry provides 10 categories. Critical severity, not the only method available. Category can be examined with reduced specific. Alright, ranking number 1, non-effective with no reason for the expected failure of the effect of the safety, health, environment, and mission. 2, very low, minimum disruption, facility function repair, failure to be accomplished during trouble call. 3, low, minimum disruption, life, facility function repair failure, much longer than trouble call that does not delay the mission. 3, 4, low and moderate disruption, facility function, some within a portion of the mission, and may need to be reworked, process delayed. 5, moderate disruption, facility function, 100% of the mission may need to be reworked or process delayed. 6, moderate disposition, facility function, some of the port of the mission lost, moderate delay, the restoring function. 7, a high disruption, facility function, some portions of the mission lost, significant delay, the restoring function. 8, very high disruption, facility function, all mission is lost, significant delays, restoring functions. 9, hazard, potential safety, health, environmental issue, failure will occur with a warning. 10, hazard, potential safety, health, environmental issue, failure will occur without warning. The probability occurrence of the failure is also based on the work automotive industry. The table 2 probability occurring with a category provided with one investment for the quantified for the probability of failure. Historical data available provide powerful tool in establishing ranking. The historical data not available the ranking the estimated based on the experience with a similar system with a facility area. Statistical effect with the column table 2 can be used based on the operating hour of the daily cycle for the other units provided with a consistent measurement approach. Statistic based for the comment may be adjusted for the comment with local conditions. For example, they each for the one organization chain with a statistical approach ranking 1 through 5 to better reflect the number of the cycles, some of them being an else. Alright, 1 in 10,000 probability occurrence unreasonable expected to occur. 2, 1 in 5,000 low failure rate, similar power. Past design had low failure rates if given the volume and load. 3, 1 in 2,000 low failure rate, similar past design that isn't in the past low failure rate given the volumes and load. 4, 1 in 1,000 occasional failure result with a similar power design past and has similar failure results with the volume and load. 5, 1 in 500 moderate failure rates from the past design moderate failure rates given the volume and loads. 1 in 6, 1 in 200 high failure rates, similar past design and past moderate failure rates given the volumes and loads. 7 in 1 in 10, 1 in 100 high failure rate, some of the parts designed has been in failure rates that cause problems. 1 in 8, 1 in 50 high failure rate, similar design and past high failure rate has caused problems. 9, 1 in 20 very high failure rate, almost certain to cause problems. 10, 1 in 10 plus very high failure rate, also certain to cause problems. Alright, RCM, there's no one set path for successfully implementing RCM. To cover the RCM, there's more of the just perform the failure mode, the effective analysis, adopting condition monitoring technique of the operation, optimizing maybe the overhaul program of the application, the age exploration. Process A, with the successfully RCM, the implementation process for the first must recognize the source of the return investment resides. If the source of the return of the investment may be tangible, or intangible, the former quantifiable business can be developed profits, financial benefits of the saving and cost avoidance, reduce work and profit to reduce liability for the organization, while in the later the benefit of the unquantifiable employs the skill with the morale with the customer relationship. Either gave the baseline with the goal with the established for them with the mechanism to discover the internal external benchmark with the result with the defined gap between as is or to be state with the return on investment, identify closing all of the portion of the gap. Remember that the cabinet enter with the RCM and it is not, but everyone very few organization will benefit the implemented all elements of the classical RCM program. RCM, all tools process has element of diminishing return, but not all RCMs are applicable with the nuclear power plant with the aircraft industry 24/7 the continuous process plan solid out conditional application bath process for the operation and production facility. However, the fewer truths everyone should follow these. No need for the pilot performing AFEM, EAM analysis. They are Key performance indicator, aka performance indicator, the essential establishing baseline with a goal for the gap of the progress for the immediate determinant of the sustainment of the KPIS for the section key performance indicator selection. The remote graphy works for the electrical distribution boiler, coupled system, roofing system, building facades. 3. If your specification align with an imbalance of the motor circuit, impediment with the oil condition, cleanliness, vibration not qualified for the product, you receive the latent defects of the 80% of the time. If you do not commission for the check for the sequence of the operation of your equipment building and the predetermined quantifiable specification will not give you expect PART2 analysis for the benefit determined for the RCM process. Look for the bottlenecks for the requiring with the failure with the valve with the money. RCM implementation. The team and environmental works better with the failure mode identical with the equipment with the same with the only with the consequent probability of failure with changes. Impact poor water chemistry with the re-estimating the term of the energy consumption life cycle cost. 9. The majority of the failures are random. Very few machines understand how the calendar works, and each exploration can be revealed hidden assets. 10. Celebrate and advertise the successful address of your failures. Credible the key to the building support with long-term success. Alright, key performance indicator selection. The significant material that must go over the process of the key performance indicators selection with the support, the maintenance program, and the meaning of the meaningful key performance indicator selection cannot be overstated. However, the significant key performance indicator for the inaccurate applicability cannot be understood. First, identify the goals and objectives of the organization, because they will have the impact of the selection of the key performance indicator selection at all levels of maintenance and activity. Key performance indicator selection cannot be properly obtained, should not be determined, and only those with control shall be selected, and issue with concern should also be identified, shall be considered for the selection of the key performance indicator for all the process of the owner for the implement overall effort. Should have selected a self-selected metric for the indicator of the goal of the progress and meeting those goals with all the foster acceptance of collecting data. Key performance indicator will also promote the key performance indicator for the continuous improvement. Also, one of the most considered the capability organization collect with the key performance indicator for the process of the user in collecting, storing data, easy extracting, reporting key performance indicator, and doing with the cost of obtaining with the data for the key performance indicator, relative value added to the overall program and the calculated of advocating the rights of the things, maintenance program, lifecycle of the cost, have the drive of the cost for capturing the supporting key performance indicator must also watch closely. Benchmark selection. After selection, appropriate key performance indicator complete with the benchmark should be established with the character of the organizational goals and practice with the point for the key performance indicator for the tool with the main for the optimization continuous improvement. Benchmark may be delivered for the organizational goals. Objective that may be selected for the distributed performed in a similar organization. The benchmarks will be used as formatting target growth, the risk associated with the achievement of the program. Utilization key performance indicator the benchmark with the established for the data collection begun with the information that must be active at the time and manner of the main continue all of the process for the counting with the key performance indicator performance enhancement tool in order to take the full advantage of performance benefits of the key performance indicator should be displayed with the public area of the tracking and publication of the key performance indicator people what is important for the goals and offer the same with the respect for the performance expectation the impact with the key performance indicators implement immediately affect with the worker, the functional being measured, additional key performance indicator integral of the team chart, as those of the team management determine the team priorities measure productivity. We're going to cut the tape there.